Hello gamers, how are we all doing today? Today we're going to be talking about aerodynamic designs, considerations you should make, and as a bit of an aside, we're also going to be talking about different types of shielding, what you should do in certain situations, and how you can design your ship for aerodynamics. So I think the best example of aerodynamics I have, like I'd say my most atmospherically considered design would have to be the Blackbird. This thing is a flying wing, very similar to the B-2 bomber. It has hinges, which I will talk about in a second, that pull both of our landing legs up and into the chassis. There's of course an interior in there and everything. But this is very aerodynamic, meant to be very fuel efficient. Now, you don't have to design aerodynamic ships. It is one of the most common styles in this game because, of course, you need aerodynamics in space. That makes sense. We have planets now, so there's actually a real reason to do that. But if you're building something industrial, I mean, do they make a dump truck aerodynamic? No. It's a big, flat square. Just like something like this. And this is still technically aerodynamic, but it's not going to be the most aerodynamic thing you come across. But its job is not to be fast. It is not to be fuel efficient. So you really don't need it for all designs. So don't necessarily think you need to make it aerodynamic in order to make it look good. So we all kind of know what aerodynamic is. It's using angled blocks at the front. And there are a million different combinations for this, of course. And I think that the front end of your ship is the most important part of the entire ship's design and can fundamentally change how it works. If you have a funky front end, the entire ship is going to look off. So here's some very common ones, of course. We have the good old two long corner blocks. Very simple. I almost never end up using this because it's just a weird shape to work with. It's hard to not make it look very conal. Instead, a nice middle ground from that is what's being used on that, which is... Yep, I know how to build ships. I'm a professional, guys. You know what? We got there eventually. I believe that this is a fantastic aero design. I think it looks more reserved. It looks more simple. It also, due to its geometry, gives you some space-saving benefits overall. If I were to use the 2 wide on here, I would have to make it completely different. It just would not work. You don't have to go complete aero, especially with 1 block wide symmetry. It's very difficult. Now you can break this apart using different types of blocks. You can use the cylinder, antenna, or detector. You can break this up, but if you want it to slice through the air, you need this hard center in it. You can also use blast doors if you have to. As you can see, that is pretty darn close to getting that slice feel if you use it correctly. But for any ship that must be purely aerodynamic, 2 block symmetry is usually the way to go. Now, this is an example of not purely aerodynamic, but now I'm going to talk about hinges. If you are building a ship that is designed to be fuel efficient, like this one, as it's a consumer vehicle, or this one, which is also a consumer vehicle, but it's a racecraft, you're going to want to reduce the drag a little bit. This has minimal cross-section. It's this little 3x3 area, and of course the visor. This is technically really bad aero, but whatever. This is a lot better aero. We hop in here, the top closes, and number 1 brings those shields in. Now that is less for aero. Those are blades, they will cut through the air, and it's more for a shielding effect. Now, I do not use the aerodynamics mod. I find that instead of encouraging aerodynamic ships, given the speeds I usually go, I usually just burn my ship alive. But as you can see, this is a very streamlined design. Consumer vehicles don't have to be military vehicles. They don't need to be crazy fast. But it's nice to have fuel efficiency. And so when aerodynamics is not number 1 concern, and it's instead price or usability, you can get away with having a bit of a notch in the middle. We look at this one. One block symmetry down the middle. Hinges are hidden away. This is incredibly simple to do, by the way. You should be doing this on all of your ships. It's better than a landing gear. It's more stable and will blow up less. Just the fact that it has a little bit of wiggle room when you land. If you end up blowing up a lot of landing gears, I highly, highly recommend you start using these double hinges. And they can be customized. Now, shielding. I think shielding is underused. If you look at a lot of sci-fi examples of deep space, you see a lot of them have Whipple shields. For something like this, that's not going to go long distances for a millennia, you don't need a Whipple shield. It will be fine. But for something that is going to be in space for a couple minutes, you're going to want a shield on the front of that thing to prevent debris from hitting significant parts of the ship. Most of these are the opposite of aero. There's a big flat disc that catches all the air. And while they're technically atmospheric capable, they're not designed to really go fast. You could use some fancy origami to create a larger Whipple shield, but honestly, every time I've tried it, it's looked terrible. But the important thing with shields is to keep as much behind the shield as possible. You go all the way back here, and I believe the only things that ended up sticking out, and I'm still sad about this, are the magnet pads. I should have done this better. Put a hinge in there, piston on there, extended it. I just didn't. Pretty tragic. This has two Whipple shields. This one's the quote-unquote aero part that deflects. It's the deflector. And it's one of the few instances where I use the war-torn armor. Because I think it looks good, because it makes sense for the aero cone to be slightly damaged. We have the main Whipple shield behind it to absorb anything that doesn't get hit. The way I tested this, I think, was to make sure it was what I wanted. I just ran into it a bunch of times to make sure it always bounced me away from the ship. And that sounds goofy, but I don't have an aerodynamics tester. So I am the aerodynamics tester. Now we have this one. This is not a Whipple shield, at least not in the traditional sense. It is a solar reflector. Now, these are two different types of shield. This is actually a solar sail design. This part's always meant to be facing the sun to get that free propulsion from it. And it's a long-term colony ship. I think I could have done a better job. I think this is the first one I actually made before I made this one, which I'm really happy with. But if your goal is a solar sail, I don't recommend using the actual gold texture. Yellow Retrofuture is, of course, the best texture in the game. Everything hides behind here, and these hinges can all fold down and hide away from whatever. This one is a solar shield. It is not designed to use the sun. Everything is hiding behind here except for some radiators. We have radiators, we have antennae. I think there's monitoring equipment. Yeah, we have a little camera monitor here. But everything is designed to hide away because, of course, the sun, I don't know if you're aware of this, but it's rather warm. Another consideration for anything you're going to be sticking in front of the sun is it needs to be cooled. So I have these water pipes using the neon tubes that feed back to this thing. Neon tubes just make everything look nicer. It's always a nice accent. And of course, I can't bring up aerodynamics without bringing up the Moby Dick, the dildo ship I made. Coincidentally, the same strategy that I used to make it quote-unquote look smooth going in also makes it very aerodynamic. There's no hard edges on the front except for this. This kind of ruins the effect. If I were to redo this today, I would make it 2-block wide symmetry, but I think it works as a, yeah. But even the jagged edges, they look very jagged from out here. It looks ribbed, but if I'm an air particle and I hit this thing, I moved nowhere. My inertia dampeners were on. You have to do this with inertia dampeners off. I am pushed upwards. So it still works, because all the wind that hits this either goes off to the side or moves up. Air, it's a fluid. You have to constantly imagine fluid passing over an object. What extra drag? See, here's the drag point right here. This is kind of a no-no. I know there's stuff in front of it, but the way turbulence works is that it does of this number. The fact I've had to bring the Moby Dick up twice really is a testament to what a pinnacle of design it is. And anybody that tells me I misspelled the goddamn sign again is going to receive one of these in the mail. Did I say you were going to receive it? Sorry, your mother is going to receive it. And not in the mail. You know where it's going. So yeah, I think Aero is a fairly simple concept. I think most people understand. I just wanted to make a couple tips and throw out there that your design does not have to be Aero to look good. In fact, it will probably look better if you don't make it Aero in most cases. If it doesn't need to be aerodynamic, if it's not a racing ship, not a fast warship, not a fuel-efficient thing, then it does not to be Aero. So, yeah, I remember the emote button this time.